Hey everyone, I'm Renita Young with QuickTake, and today we found out that one of the officers in the Breonna Taylor case was indicted, but no charges were directly linked to her killing. And right now we have Brianna Baker. She's the founder of Justice for Black Girls. Brianna, thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course, it's an honor to be here. Thank you all for curating this space to center Black women and girls during this time.
Absolutely. Now, why don't we just start out with your reaction? What's your reaction to the movement that's happened overall first?
Right. In the words of Fannie Lou Hamer, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Right. I'm heartbroken. I'm overwhelmed with emotion, not just at the fact that Breonna Taylor still has not received justice, but about the fact that I knew this was going to be the case before I even opened the headline. History told me what the verdict would be. History has always told me that Black women experience second-class citizenship in America, right? And that there is nothing new about the ways in which our bodies are less valuable than our aesthetic. And so here in this moment, there's an urgency around rallying and centering Black women and girls. And so again, thank you all for being here, overwhelmed, emotional, but ready to move forward and to demand justice.
You have a specific reaction to the indictment itself. Do you think this is actually justice?
Yeah. In no way, shape, or form is this justice. This woman laid dead, and what received more justice was the property next door to her. In this capacity, a mother has lost her daughter. A 20-year-old girl has lost her big sister, right? And a boyfriend has lost his friend, his lover, his partner. There is nothing just about a woman being killed in her sleep as a result of state violence. There is nothing just about the settlement. There is nothing just about a world that continuously shows Black women and girls that they don't matter. Black women and girls are not disposable, right? This justice for us looks like the right to live. Justice for us looks like Black women healing. It looks like liberation. It looks like joy. It's not just talking about Black women and girls after we die, right? It's about celebrating our lives and the way that we live. And so until Breonna Taylor, because Breonna Taylor cannot live, this is not justice. And because her killers are able to walk away with impunity, this is absolutely not justice.
Okay. And just as you alluded to, this is unfortunately nothing new. Unfortunately, there have been several Black women ahead of Breonna Taylor and may just as well be some after her. How do you process this, the fact that how America relates to Black women? And there's been a problem in a lot of different ways at how America relates to Black women and girls. How do you process this being a Black woman?
Being a Black woman is about cleaning up a mess that you didn't create consistently. It's about being required to not just be twice as good, but be 4 times as good because of misogynoir and intersectionality, right? Kimberly Crenshaw and Moya Bailey do excellent jobs of theorizing the experiences of Black womanhood. When you think about intersectionality, you think about the ways in which different parts of your identity influence the way in which you experience the world, right? So I don't just experience racism as a Black person, I experience sexism as a Black woman, right? And because of misogynoir, I'm thinking about the ways patriarchy and internalized sexism impacts my particular experience as a Black woman. And so there's always a reconciliation about what it means to be not only Black, but to be woman. And for folks that are Black women and queer, or Black woman, queer, and Muslim, or trans, or gender non-conforming, the list goes on about the ways in which the world asks you to other yourself, or silence parts of yourself, or fragment parts of yourself. And so this is not just about Black women, but all folks who have to identify as other, right? All folks whose experiences are not central to America's, all folks who have to hyphenate their American experience as if themselves are not American.
Thank you for sharing that. And you know what else? I think it's interesting that this starts when you're a little Black girl.
Absolutely.
You talked about some of the microaggressions and criminalizing Black girls. I've read studies on how little Black children are actually treated more like adults, reprimanded more like adults from grade school. So how do you feel about that? What do you make of that? And what do you think, where do you think we stand right now with that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a current problem, right? And again, it starts as girls are young. Studies show that through adultification bias, that Black girls, particularly between the ages of 5 and 14, are seen as less innocent, less childlike, less needing of protection, less needing of nurturing. There are grown folks who are looking at 5-year-old Black girls as adults. That is our problem. That is something that we need to unpack. And because of this, Black girls are suspended 6 times more than their white counterparts. They're expelled 53 times more than their white counterparts. They are kicked out of school. They're funneled out of schools and into criminal legal systems, and not for explicit forms of misbehavior, but because of subjective forms of misbehavior, like talking back. There are girls that have been sentenced to incarceration from school for throwing a piece of cake on the floor and not picking it up to the satisfaction of the officer, right? These are the real life experiences of Black women and girls. And again, it starts with childhood. And so we have to do the work to unpack. We have to do the work of unlearning so that we can truly see Black women and girls as Black women and girls, as women and girls, and as human.
What can non-Black women, non-Black girls do very practically to help stop this? Some of those issues that start when you're a little Black girl. What can everyone else do? Can they simply notice it? What can they do?
Sure. And so the first thing that you have to do is teach yourself, right? Because it's super difficult to change without knowledge of what needs to be changed. So the first thing I would suggest is that you pick up either Push Out by Monique Morris, which is an extraordinary text that centers the criminalization of Black girls in schools. You can also pick up Georgetown Center for Poverty and Law has done an excellent study and policy brief on girlhood erased, which touches on adultification bias, and that is pretty recent. You can also watch Push Out the film. It is viewed and it is readily accessible on PBS, right? There's so many different texts that you can take. I also would push you to think about Women, Race, and Class by Angela Davis, right? Are Prisons Obsolete? And so as you're thinking micro, right, and as you're thinking about you and your own feelings, perspectives, biases, it's also then time to connect yourself with organizations that are already doing the work, right? Justice for Black Girls, Girls for Gender Equity, National Black Women's Justice Initiative, right? Black Lives Matter in Louisville, right? There are folks that are on the front lines every day. So as you are reading, as you are learning, as you are unpacking, you can also then connect to stand in solidarity with the folks who are on the front lines.
I'm glad you mentioned the front lines because we have to talk about the protests that have been happening. You guys see visuals right now of protests, and there are several others planned for this year. What do you think the role of protests are in this particular movement?
Sorry, I'm taken aback by that visual. But protest is critically important to this movement, right? And because we know historically the power of protest, we know historically the power of putting one foot in front of the other and taking up space. Every time they take one of our bodies, our others that are able and capable and still alive must stand up and stand in solidarity with folks to demand justice. Protesting is not just about taking up physical space. It's about figuratively taking up space, right? It's about demanding that stakeholders see us and recognize us and know that it's a problem. It's about standing in solidarity with folks who are experiencing the pain of having to even declare that Black Lives Matter. Think about how exhausting that is to consistently have to argue your humanity. And so folks are tired of having to declare that our lives matter. That should be inherent. That should be innate. Folks should know that if you have lungs, your lungs matter. And so the fact that we have to consistently declare over and over again that Black lives matter and that Black women and girls matter and that Black trans people matter, right? That is exhausting. And so protest is critically important because even though we're tired, we keep pushing. Even though we're weary, we put one foot in front of the other, and we are working to create the America we know that we've always deserved.
Is that why it's so important to you to educate people on this, to create the America we know we want and deserve?
Yeah, absolutely. I think about as I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, all the ways I struggled with placelessness and just displacement, right? In a world that refused to recognize my full identity. I was often asked to fragment myself, and it took a long time for me to realize that you can't fragment yourself to make a broken system powerful. And so it's super important that we educate folks, because I realize that it's not that folks actively want to dehumanize, but they don't even realize the ways in which they've been socialized to inherent privilege, and then inherent bias, and then inherent prejudice, right? And so there's so many things that were in place before my existence, our existence, and we have to do the work to unpack. And so education is critically important so that we can work again to create the America we know we've always deserved.
I mean, but even before that, it seems like a certain level of self-awareness has to happen first. And being able to possibly see yourself in that position. That's kind of what I'm hearing here. But I want to ask you something different now.
Sure.
You said before we talk that we got to work to create the world that we know we deserve. Do you feel a sense of hope with this movement? A lot of people have said it's different. Different for you? Do you feel a sense of hope?
I will always find hope because I know that the power of my ancestors lives within me, right? That we have always been our own saviors, and that I am standing here, my ancestors' wildest dream. There has to be hope. We cannot get hopeless, because there's always going to be work to do, but you can always think about the work that has been done. It's not happening quick enough, right? But it is happening. And the fact that folks know that this is a problem, the fact that there is civil unrest, for me, offers hope. That lets me know that I'm not alone in what I'm feeling, that I share the sentiments of other folks, and not just folks that look like me, but folks who don't. And that we are working together to demand justice and dismantle all the systems that got us here, right? And so there has to be a hopefulness, right? Even if you just read one page of Our Prisons Obsolete and feel different, even if you just feel one page of New Jim Crow, even if you just read one page of Sabrina Fulton's memoir, right? If you just read one page of Tamika Palmer, Breonna Taylor's mother's Instagram page, and the ways that she incites hope and hopefulness in folks. As she's mourning the loss of her child, you have to find joy in knowing that we hold power, right? And that we can change the world. It doesn't feel like it all the time, but we can. And our ancestors do not want us to grow weary and well-doing, right? We have to just, again, keep putting one foot in front of the other. We have to lean on each other and know that even when you feel weak, there is someone else that is strong enough to lead so that you can follow and support.
Okay. And what I understand is that this is a lot of what your organization talks about, as well as your Freedom Fighters Fund. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. And so that fund was actually created in honor of Oluwatoyin Solu, a 19-year-old activist whose death lies at the intersection of racial injustice and gender-based violence. Toyin was on the front lines and no one showed up for her. She was homeless and then sexually assaulted in a place where she was seeking refuge and then ultimately killed. And what we know, again, about marginalization and oppression is that there is never just one victim. And so in order for us to create the America we know we deserve, we have to put in restorative practices and procedures that address the core issue, right? Thinking about Angela Davis, radical means grasping things at the root. So in that capacity, we have a $100,000 distribution that gives microgrants to Black girl activists on the front lines. And so Black girls 25 and under are able to apply and receive immediate funds so that as they are on the front lines fighting for America, that we are standing up and standing behind them.
Okay. Any last words to the people most impacted by this news, by these situations? We're talking specifically Black women. You're a Black woman, I'm a Black woman. Do you have any specific closing thoughts to Black women at this time?
I think what's most important at this time is to remind us that we are sacred, that we are worthy, and that all other folks stop asking Black women to prove that we are worthy, because we know that we are, and that we deserve to be tired. We deserve to be angry. We deserve to be upset, and do not pathologize our anger. Do not pathologize our unrest, and name our frustration what it is: a response to injustice and a response to the systemic negligence of Black women and girls. And so to all my Black women, to all my Black girls, please know that we are avidly fighting for your full protection, that we aspire a world that does not just celebrate your death, but is really, really focused on your life, that we are looking for an America that honors the fullness of Black girlhood and is more concerned about our experience and our aesthetic, a world that is not taking the microphones away figuratively and literally from Black women and girls, but are standing behind us. Too often the narrative is that we need to invite Black women and girls to the table. But I declare and I hope that Black women and girls will believe that we are worthy of full ownership of the table, and we should invite who we want to have a seat on our own terms.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I think that's a great place to leave it. Everyone, please do check out more information on Justice for Black Girls at the social media handles that you've seen throughout this broadcast. I'm Renita Young with QuickTake, and have a great evening, everyone.
All right. Thank you so much.